Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at people share their creepy, unexplainable experiences as a kid. So yeah, let's just get right into the video. About 5 years ago, my parents were sitting out on the back porch on a summer night. Out of the corner of her eye, my mum saw a person-sized white translucent figure float by a tree. She asked if my dad saw it too, and he said yes. He's a tough guy, but he was really freaked out, and so was she, so they both went inside. The next morning, my mum was walking by the tree where they saw the figure, and she noticed a very old-looking earring sitting on top of the dirt. She didn't wear earrings, and it wasn't the kind of earring I would wear. It looked like it belonged to an old lady, and it was just dropped there. My mum brought it inside and put it in her jewelry box. The next day, it was sitting in the middle of the basement door. From then on, I started hearing footsteps and whispering in my room at least once a week until I moved out. Bro, the mum brought the ghost in because she brought the freaking earring in, and that belonged to the ghost, so now the ghost has permission to enter the house. Oh, hell no. Oh my gosh, that's so scary. I'd totally watch a horror movie like this though. Wow. I woke up one night when I was 12 because I dreamt that my older brother got into a car accident. I got out of bed and wandered downstairs to the kitchen to get something to drink. My mother was sitting there and asked me why I was awake. I told her I had a bad dream and need something to drink. I got a glass of water when it ringed at our door. My mother went to look who was there in the middle of the night. 2 police officers that asked if they could come inside for a moment. I couldn't hear what they were talking about because I was still in the kitchen and they were in the hallway. After the 2 officers left, my mother came back to the kitchen completely pale and told me that I should go to bed now. I asked her what's wrong when she informed me that my brother was in a car accident and she needs to wake up my dad and go to the hospital now. When I pointed out that this was a bad dream I had before waking up, she only looked at me for a couple of seconds. I prepared myself for comments like, "Don't be silly and go to bed now," but instead she said, "Me too." So basically, we both had the same dream of my brother having a car accident, and we both woke up minutes before the police came over to tell us it really happened. My brother survived with some minor injuries, and we've seen the photos of the accident in the newspaper the next day. It looked 100% like in my dream, to the smallest detail. The way he lost control over the car, where it flipped the first time, and the tree it came to a stop. Even today, my mother and I talk about this. Nobody else believes us when we tell the story. I totally believe this. I totally believe dreams are in between reality and somewhere. You know what I mean? I feel like sometimes when we do dream about something, it does happen. And you're like, oh my god, I had a dream about this. Or it's like déjà vu. And I do feel like some people have more of a gut feeling for their dreams than other people. When I was 9 or 10, my dad took me to visit with an older hunting buddy friend of his. My parents were divorced and my dad lived in another part of the country. So while I had known this guy since I was a toddler, I didn't share the same common interests as either of them. The older friend was a gun dealer and had lots of catalogs. This was before the internet was in wide use to order bullets, magazines, guns, etc. And they often spent hours going through listings to determine what they wanted to order. We got there fairly early and my dad said that after an hour or two, we'd all go to Hardee's for breakfast before going to shoot clay birds. Now, I'm a youngin', I don't care much about guns or hunting for sport, and I'm incredibly just bored, so I start wandering around the house, reading my video game magazines that I brought with me, and very quickly the hour or two has passed, and they're still down there. I ask if they're gonna leave anytime soon, and their friend suggests I check the refrigerator in the kitchen and see if there's anything I want to eat. I look through the fridge and find nothing. However, on the kitchen table, I see an apple and decide that will be appetizing enough to hold me over as I pick up the apple and prepare to take a bite. At that point, his wife steps in and tells me, "Don't eat that, everything in the bowl is wax." I tell her thank you for warning me and continue to wander around the house, burning time until we can get going. Maybe another 30 minutes later, I go back to the basement where they're going through catalogs and ask when we're going to Hardee's. My dad's friend asks if I'm still hungry after going through the fridge. I tell him that I was going to eat an apple, but his wife told me it was wax before I made the mistake. Both of them give me a blank stare, and after about 20 seconds of shock, my dad explains that his wife recently passed away. I then go back through the house to try to find her to show that they were just joking with me, but sure enough, she was nowhere to be found. Roughly 30 years later, before he passed away, my dad still insisted that I must have imagined it, but I didn't. She told me not to eat the wax fruit. I believe this too. Wow, isn't that crazy? I feel like she was there. She was there just chilling around and making sure her husband is safe and making sure this kid is safe. Yo, can you imagine going through that? You're like, what do you mean? I saw her. She was telling me this. And you have like the full memory of it. You remember her face, you remember her voice. And then everyone's telling you she died. Oh. I would freak out. I'd be like, what do you mean? I saw her. So like, what is that? Is that like an illusion? The kid is just imagining things, a hallucination? Because what really is it, right? Why was the fridge empty? Like, that's what I want to know, because the guy's like, go through the fridge, there's something to eat, and then the fridge was empty though. I'm confused. When I was a kid, my family lived in a blue house that was oddly shaped. One year, the house got completely gutted and nearly destroyed by a flood, and they had to knock down a wall between the living room and the kitchen. So after the flood, you could see all the way down the hall to my parents' bedroom door. This house is, or was, strange for the lack of a better term. I was a terrible sleeper as a kid and would routinely wake up and just go into the living room and watch cartoons on low volume if I couldn't go back to sleep. One morning, I'm out in the living room sitting across the chair with my feet up on a window. Don't ask me why. I was a stupid 8 or 9-year-old. From where the chair was, I could see just over the kitchen counter down that hall to my parents' room. A movement caught my eye. I looked up and saw the shadowy outline of a man walking towards me, kind of near to my parents' door. Thinking it was my dad, I said something like, "Hey dad, sorry if the TV was too loud." Dad is a notoriously light sleeper and would wake up from anything. Except there was no response. Within seconds, my foot ends up going through the window, and I scream, and my parents actually wake up to figure out what's going on at 4:30 a.m. in the morning. At this point, I'm preoccupied, but realized much later that I definitely saw the outline of a man. But there was no way it was my dad, because A, he came bounding out of the bedroom after my scream, and B, I realized the shoulders of that outline were much higher than what my dad's would have been. Fast forward to a few years ago, we've moved far away from the blue house, and my mom and I are hanging out and catching up. For some reason, the blue house comes up, and I tell mom that the place still gives me the creeps and weird stuff happened there when I was a kid. Mom's response, "Oh, you must have saw the shadow man too." Excuse me, Mom? Excuse me? What do you mean? What do you mean I must have? Why is she acting so normal about it? So you knew this house was haunted all along? That's crazy. At my parents' house, I used to hear my mom calling out to me when she didn't, and she confirmed she'd hear me call out to her when I didn't. That was a common occurrence. Also, whenever I'd be alone for a little while, if my mom was late from work or at the grocery store, I'd usually be in the main living room playing N64. I would oftentimes hear loud banging sounds from upstairs as if a heavy piece of furniture tipped over. I'd go check and nothing was out of place. Both my mother and grandmother have confirmed similar experiences when they're alone in the house. There was also the time I was downstairs on my laptop, everyone else in bed. It was after midnight and I didn't realize just how dark everything had gotten without the lights on. I'm zoned out when I begin to hear what sounds like a murmuring from behind me, like the low rumble you'd hear at a gathering when people are talking and you can't make out conversation. The hairs on my neck immediately stood up and my body locked up from fear. Tears ran down my face from the physical reaction my body was having. I refused to acknowledge it and kept staring at my laptop screen in silence. It took forever for my body to go back to normal. Sometime later, I told my mother what happened and it freaked her out because she said she's heard the murmuring as well. I've always hated that house. That is scary. Every single time you're home alone, the house just starts making noise. And you hear people talking, murmuring. Are you freaking kidding me? Hell no, be out of the house immediately. So I don't actually remember this, but my mum told me about it. My grandfather died when I was a year old. Prior to his death, he loved to play with me and would make me laugh in this very specific way. The night he died, my mum heard me making noise. So she goes in assuming I'm crying, but I'm not. I'm staring at the ceiling, laughing hysterically, just like my grandfather used to make me laugh. She's still convinced he came to say goodbye to me. Oh, this is wholesome. This is very wholesome. Oh. I'm a parent of toddlers and kids now, and I have a creepy story from last year. We were driving with my then 3-year-old son in the car and stopped at a red light next to a cemetery. Out of nowhere, my son looked at the cemetery and said, "There are people laying down there and they can't get up." My wife asked my son what he was talking about, and he pointed to the cemetery and said, "All of the people laying down there in the park are stuck." My wife and I just looked at each other in silence, completely freaked out. At this point in our son's life, there had been no deaths in the family, and we had never discussed death with him. I'm still creeped out when I think about it. Wait, that's kind of sad if that's true. Like, if you're buried in a coffin, does that mean you're stuck there? Because this kid said, "Oh, the people laying down in the park are stuck. They're stuck in there. They can't get out." Is that why people just like having the ashes thrown in the ocean so they can just swim around or float around kind of thing? Yo, excuse me? Well, that's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Tell me in the comments down below what your thoughts are. And as always, thanks for watching. Hope you guys liked it and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!